Welcome, Ruchim Habayim. Tonight is a unique moment in our community, an important moment. Through the great efforts of so many people, so many that all of them cannot be named, tonight's event is occurring and is already, just judging by the size of the audience, a success. We're grateful to all of you for being here tonight. I want to particularly express particular appreciation for the principals who made tonight happen. This effort took a lot of planning, a lot of thought, and is certainly not the last word on this subject, but really more of the beginning. And I want to express our appreciation to, first, the Marion and Aaron Gurel JCC, which is an affiliated agency in our community of UJA Federation, which deserves special recognition for spearheading this community-wide event. We thank you. There are several representatives of the JCC who are here tonight, and I'm not going to take the time, but please generally accept our appreciation and gratitude. I want to thank all of the other leaders, the Rabbonim, and leaders of schools who are here tonight as well, and we'll be hearing from some of them momentarily, for their leadership and for their support. Also would like to express our appreciation to the organizational efforts of Achiezer and Madregos for their involvement and collaboration. And I want to also express our appreciation to those political leaders who are here tonight. I know that Todd Kaminsky is here. Welcome. If there's anyone else, thank you. I want to make a particular point that tonight is not a political event, and in a certain sense, it's really more of a private conversation. This is a closed to the media event. And I ask everyone to be mindful of that. We don't need pictures taken. We don't need any real publicity. And we're not going to make any solicitations for any particular organizations, whether they're represented up here or those who are in the audience. We will have questions, hopefully later in the program. They'll be in written form, and they can be written on handed out index cards and given in to the volunteers in the green shirts in each section, and they will hopefully be addressed as much as possible after the presentation. I have to also add one more expression of thanks, and that is to my colleague, Rabbi Yaakov Trump of Young Israel of Lawrence Cedarhurst. Rabbi Trump truly made this a heartfelt and driven idea that he saw to fruition, and we thank you. I'm now going to turn over the mic to our moderator, Rabbi Baruch Ber Bender of Achiezer.
Thank you, Rabbi Hain, on behalf of everybody here, of course, for opening your shul like you do for every Davar Shebekdusha in the community. And it's my bracha to you and the entire Kehillah that the doors of this shul should always be open for simchas and happy occasions only. We can't keep everybody too long. I did want to add a couple of thank yous. I was asked, if I may throw in my own 2 cents, I've gotten a new friend from this entire endeavor, although I've known him in the past, and I know it's just been mentioned. But the tireless efforts of Rabbi Trump, day and night for many weeks now, has been something special to watch. He was so, as they say in Yiddish, übergegeben, giving all of himself to make sure that tonight would be a success for those that are here, those that are watching the live streaming. So an additional thank you for Rabbi Trump for all that you've done. Special thank you as well from the JCC to Kathy Byrne, who really worked tirelessly for tonight's success. Thank you, Kathy. To Lori Brofman on all of her volunteers, and to Rachel Deutsch. You didn't come to hear from me tonight. We have on the left a group of panelists of esteemed people who have spent so many years in their own respective careers, in their own respective lines of work, ensuring that they can somehow, some way, enhance the lives of others. The only thing I wanted to add in learning so much from this experience and prior, we live, Baruch Hashem, in a beautiful time. Tonight is not about doom and gloom, is not about all terrible things. Tonight we, from one parent to another, we're here because we care and we love our most cherished possession, which is our children. We want to do everything and anything possible to ensure their success, to ensure that they have every tool they need to grow and mature into young adults and build their own families one day. However, as parents, we know, just like there are challenges for us, there are certainly challenges for our children. And tonight, we will paint a picture about the drug abuse problem in the community. Why? Why are people here if their own children have never experienced this, or if they never had this kind of problem in their own family? Because as I said, we'll talk about, which will be rigorously followed up with. This question is directed to all on the panel, perhaps Rabbi Silver. What can a husband or wife do if they notice a drug or alcohol problem that their spouse is perhaps using? What is the first step they can take to possibly deal with it?
A spouse should confront the addict right away directly and have a conversation and explain to the spouse that our lives are in danger, both our lives, our children's lives, and we have to get help together. And I would recommend that the spouse bring in the addict in together to a professional and start the work. But don't think maybe she's not using, maybe he's not using. Don't think that, worst comes to worst, you wasted an hour and spoke to a professional or to a Rav. But absolutely take action, because that's what we have to do when we're sick and suffering.
Rabbi Hain.
Just a quick comment. Just to follow up Rabbi Silver's point, I think just perhaps a little bit of a rabbinic perspective. And I think I want to maybe push back, if I can, for a minute on maybe an impression that I don't know was intentional, but might have been left. What I've seen over being in the community for a good while is that there are people, adults or children, who sometimes, through no fault of the parent or of the family or of anyone, simply succumb to the problem. It could be a number of risk factors, family issues, of course, among them, but it could be other things: impulsiveness, anxiety, depression, lack of academic success, bullying, a whole host of possibilities that the parents have nothing to do with. And they shouldn't feel the shame that what did we do wrong? You may have done nothing wrong. You simply had the blessing of having a child who has issues. And last time I checked, Sefer Bereshis is full of difficult children born to Jewish parents who have problems. And actually, one of them might have even used drugs, but that's a different issue. So my point is that I think that there's a Jewish issue here as well, if I may, and that is the worry about shame, the worry about discovery. And I think that only exacerbates the risk factors. So one of the things that I would dream about happening from this kind of an event is that the community brings this literally out of the closet more. And I congratulate all of you for being here and enabling that to happen. But I think this is no different in the sense to any other health or medical challenge. And we can't live by beating ourselves up as parents or as siblings, but rather it should be confronted, as the commissioner has said, it's a reality, and it has to be dealt with not from the perspective of where did we go wrong. You may have done nothing wrong, but you need to confront the problem openly.
Thank you, Rabbi. That was actually our next question. Our parent was asking, what if we do it all right? The next question is geared towards Shlomo Katz from Hatzalah. Two people actually asked this question. Is there a specific pattern or type of drugs that have been more common lately? Are you seeing overdoses from a certain kind of drugs? Are you seeing a certain common denominator with the interventions that you were a part of?
It's hard to say that we're seeing a pattern. It changes week to week. There was one horrible week that there was a bad batch of heroin released on the street, and we lost 4 children in a 4-day period. Any drug that's not being supervised by a medical authority is a bad drug. Whether it was prescribed last week, a year ago, for your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, or whether it's an illicit narcotic bought on the street, any drug not being supervised properly is bad. And no, there's no pattern that we see.
Those who are watching my podium here, a little pattern puzzle here. Reason being is more than 6 people have asked the following question, so I'll pick the one that I think represented it best. How do I dissuade my child who wants to try marijuana? He says everyone is doing it, it's not a big deal. My friends have been doing it for a while. Let me just try it. What is the big deal? And most have asked Karen to address this.
You know, I think that one of the issues is that a lot of the social media use pumps up a lot of the involvement with drugs. It's not just the friends, it's not just the environment. And I think people really have to be careful to monitor that much more carefully than they do. I don't think we're aware of how much time our children spend with closed doors and with devices in their hands. I also think that children spend a lot of time being very anxious, and one of the things that, you know, Rivka had addressed was helping our children deal with their anxiety and talk to them. And the, you know, Hatzalah, Shlomo Katz had mentioned the issue of being, you know, having communication and being in touch with what your children are saying. I think that it's, you know, it's very important to have a constant dialogue and a flow of information with them and really see what's on their minds other than this whole interaction and obsession with drugs, and to also keep them occupied.
We want, as parents, to do everything possible in our power to make sure that our children are safe. And the same way we take our little children and we show them that you can't cross the street until you're old enough, and then you look both ways 35 times. The same way we make fire safety plans with our children, and the same way we teach our children about stranger safety, and so on and so forth. And how many of us, before we sent our children to camp, we explained and discussed with them different things to look out for. The same way we do all that is the same reason why we are here tonight. Rabbi Dr. Aaron Glatt is the assistant rabbi at the Young Israel of Woodmere. He has been giving a Daf Yomi share for nearly 30 years and gives a weekly Gemara Be'in share, daily halacha shiurim, and many other classes. An international lecturer on medical and halachic issues, Rabbi Dr. Glatt has authored 2 sefarim, Through Art School, Visiting the Sick, a halachic and medical guide with down-to-earth advice and women in the Talmud. Board certified in internal medicine and infectious diseases, Rabbi Glatt is currently the chairman of medicine and chief of infectious diseases at South Nassau Communities Hospital, a full clinical professor of medicine at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, and a spokesperson for the Infectious Disease Society of America. Previously, he held positions as the executive vice president at Mercy Medical Center, president and CEO of St. Joseph's Hospital, and associate dean at New York Medical College. I need a deep breath, Rabbi Glatt. A graduate of Yeshiva University, MD from Columbia University, he is the author of 200+ scientific journal articles, book chapters, and presentations, and has served on editorial boards as a reviewer for many prestigious journals, and has worked on many government, hospital, medical school, and public health committees, and has been frequently interviewed by print, television, and on online media. Rabbi Dr. Aaron Glatt.
So again, I would welcome everybody, first of all the wonderful Rabbanim, Rosh Yeshiva that are here in this holy Kehillah, to talk to you about why we're having such a program tonight and the consequences, heaven forbid, Rahmana Litzlan, of these terrible afflictions that occur in our community, not only in those communities. There's a famous Gemara in the Psachim, on Daf Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, where the great Rav, one of the greatest rabbis of all time, tells his son, Amalei Rav L'chia Berei, be very careful. Lo tishtei sama, don't use drugs. If Rav had to tell his son, beware of the dangers of drugs, alachas kama v'kama, how much do we need to make sure that we and our children are aware of that Gemara? We're in the 3-week period of time. We're in the 9 days. We'll unfortunately be commemorating the tremendous destruction at Beitar on Tisha B'Av. Beitar was a horrific disaster for the Jewish people. Losses of hundreds of thousands of precious lives. And the rabbis instituted a special bracha on wine, Hatov v'Hameitiv. And the Mishnah Brura, the Chafetz Chaim writes, why did the rabbis institute a bracha on wine, a special bracha besides the Bari Priya Gofen? And the Mishnah Brura writes, so you should Yiskor Yom HaMisa. You should remember when wine is around, lo yimoshech achar yayin harbe. A person has to be very careful when he's dealing with alcohol, when he's dealing with drugs, when he's dealing with all sorts of mood-altering agents. The Chafetz Chaim says on Purim, when there is potentially a mitzvah to drink, it's absolutely forbidden to drink if it's going to cause you to in any way cause a chilul Hashem, if you're not going to daven Mariv, if you're not going to bench properly, then do not drink. That's when there's a mitzvah to drink. There's, in the last 2 weeks, the parishos, we've seen the Benos Tzlofchad mentioned 2 times. And it tells us that they have a tremendous lineage, that they come from Menashe ben Yosef. And then it tells us that they come from Yosef. So Rashi on the spot tells us, to show the love that Yosef had for Eretz Yisrael, it transmitted down to his daughters. They had tremendous love for Eretz Yisrael. And we learn from there an important idea, that whatever parents think is important, their children will think is important. And if the parents come home from a kiddush and say the liquor wasn't top notch, then that will show the children what's important. And if the parents complain and do all sorts of activities that are inappropriate, that's what your children will do as well. The medical and halachic complications of substance abuse, be it alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, opioids, the list unfortunately goes on, are very serious. There's not a single organ in the body that's not severely damaged by these drugs. They will cause trouble. Because somebody used these substances and didn't get into trouble is not a reason for everybody else to say, I'm not going to be affected. The addiction rates, psychological as well as physiological, are extremely high with many of these substances. And I've taken care of hundreds, if not thousands, of intravenous drug abusers during my career with infectious disease complications. And not one of them that I can recall didn't start off with marijuana and alcohol before they went on to harsher substances. The purpose of this program tonight, as you'll hear from the honored experts that I have the great honor to be with tonight on this panel, is to tell you that this is a problem that everybody in this room, everybody in our community needs to be aware of. And my personal message is, your children are going to...
And there's many other ways of being in the world, and I think the environment here in the 5 towns offers them. I think there's also a manipulation aspect to it. I think there's an easy segue from anxiety and isolation and not wanting to do your work and not wanting to deal with not having a quick fix and wanting instant gratification that our children are attracted to about the marijuana and the idea of using as a way of entering into a group. And we have to invest the time and make them interested in other ways of being in the world. So I think it's, multi-determined, and I think we have to look at it from all of those angles.
I think we have time for 2 more questions. And again, the following question is 2-part and was asked by several people, and it's probably addressed to several of you. What is the role of the school in all of this? What should the protocol be when rumors and reports of vaping, drinking, etc. trickle in? Part 2, how can we create a safe and comfortable way for children to be able to get help for a friend? 3 separate people asked this question, who is dabbling in drug usage, but they are so nervous without feeling like a snitch. And if I may add to that question, we dealt with a situation in the community last year, several of us up here, where there was a young adult who was dabbling in drug use, and it was starting to grow, and he was not getting the proper help because the friends were so nervous, both from a law enforcement angle that he would get in trouble from the police, and both from in the community. They were just too scared to be a plain old snitch. What is the best way to go about that?
This is a multi-layered question. I think it's critically important to realize that you don't have the expertise to deal with this yourself, and that you need to seek an appropriate professional to help you. Not every rabbi is capable of counseling in this fashion. Not every physician is capable of counseling in this fashion. And certainly, a person without any specialized pastoral or medical therapy is certainly not going to be qualified. And there needs to be safe havens where people can reach out and get help in a non-judgmental and in a non-tattling type of a way. We have something in the hospital where you can drop off a baby, no questions asked. We need to have that same type of milieu where people can go to either the police or to counselors at the school, a trusted Rebbe, a trusted Rav, and say, I have a problem.
and I need your help. And if that person can't provide that help, they have to be able to have resources to go to assist those children. You're not tattling on somebody if you're trying to help them. You're trying to help them. And there has to be a way that we can prevent some of the anguish that we've unfortunately all heard about or personally experienced when it comes to, I didn't do anything. I should have done something. And there is no simple answer, but there has to be resources within the community, within the shul, certainly within the schools. And I think most of the schools have people, counselors, whether they're guidance counselors, whether they're rabbeim, that need to be able to be approached by any talmid, any talmidah, without any concerns about tattling, and that it's certainly not usher. It's absolutely pikuach nefashos. There's no mesira question. You're not telling on somebody. But there have to be people that you can go to. Every yeshiva has to have that set up. Every shul has to have that set up where you can go to the Rav, you go to the Rosh Yeshiva and say, we got a problem. How are we going to address this problem?
Mr. Commissioner.
So, just one message, if you bring this home to your children tonight, and make sure they clearly understand this. Under the Good Samaritan law, if they're at a party and somebody overdoses, I don't care if there's a half a pound of heroin on the table. Nobody's get arrested if you call us. We come, we take care of the aided, the drugs get taken, obviously, but no one will get arrested. Nobody that calls will get arrested under the Good Samaritan law. We need to get that child into help so he lives for another day. We'll worry about the drug part of it another day, but they got to know, don't be afraid to call us. We're not looking to arrest anybody. We want to get that child help.
I got my marching orders from the rabbi. We're going to close the evening. I just want to thank all the panelists again for the remarkable wisdom they gave tonight. I know that follow-up is so key. And to close out the evening with some substantive ways we'll do that is Rabbi Trump, who's really been at the helm of this remarkable unity and unifying event. Rabbi Trump.
So I want to take the last few minutes here and thank everybody, the esteemed panelists, and everybody who's been involved in making this event an important and necessary moment in our community. People in a few minutes are going to walk out of this room and are going to be asked, so how was the program? The program does not depend on the content or the presentation of those who spoke. How the program was is how we take it to mean and what actions we take afterwards. How the program was does not depend what happened in the last hour and a half. How this program was depends on us as we walk out of these doors. This is not simply one evening. This is not the end, this is the beginning of the discussion. Just to appreciate that. In lieu of that, in lieu of appreciating that, and the many questions which we have and should have, we have moved to the next step, which is trying to create more of a healthy forum for discussion. As all the people have been handed as they walk through the door, is a small pamphlet, the 5 Towns Drug Abuse Awareness Program. This is not comprehensive. This is merely a sampling. There are many wonderful organizations who are not on this program, but this is a start. This is the awareness that we have resources right here on our doorsteps and across this country and in Israel to be aware of. If you take a look on the front cover, there's a new email address, an anonymous email address, help5t@gmail.com. That is for follow-up questions. There is a team which is going to be triaging those questions, not answering those questions, triaging those questions to the necessary professionals, to the necessary organizations, the right organizations, a team which is being trained.
To see what you hold important in life. If they see you getting excited about the World Cup, they'll get excited about the World Cup. If they see you get excited about the Rav's Drasha Shabbos afternoon, they will get excited about the Rav's Drasha Shabbos afternoon. We teach our children not by words, but by actions. And our children are very smart. If they see us using substances, giving a chashivus to substances, they will also. In Yirtz Hashem, out of this meeting tonight, let us see a haskalah of ending some of the terrible tragedies that have occurred in our neighborhood, and in Yirtz Hashem, continuing to build a beautiful community that we live in, Ad Bias Go'al Mashiach.
Thank you, Rabbi Dr. Glatt. Moving right along, our next panelist, Rabbi Dov Silver Shlita, the founder and executive vice president of Madrigos, has worked extensively with struggling teens, young adults, and their families for over 25 years. He has effectively mentored, supported, and empowered thousands of teens and young adults throughout his career, helping them cope with their challenges and lead more fulfilling lives. Under his leadership, Madrigos provides a wide array of innovative services and programs geared towards helping teens and young adults overcome life's everyday challenges one step at a time. Madrigos' goal is to provide all of its members with the necessary tools and skills to live a healthy lifestyle. Based on his extensive knowledge and experience, Rabbi Silver feels strongly that prevention services are highly effective in addressing challenges before they progress to a more critical level. As such, Madrigos provides prevention programs and services, including the schools-based services program, Parenting Matters program, the Lounge, and more. Rabbi Silver is sought after for guidance from rabbinic leaders, educators, and professionals in cities worldwide. He also lectures regularly to communities and organizations throughout the country. Rabbi Dov Silver.
I as well want to compliment the entire team and staff and everyone that was involved in putting this together. It's a very big testament to who we are. And I've been speaking around the country on this topic, and I just want to, first of all, compliment our leadership, our rabbanim, our principals and mechanchim and teachers in this community in specific, that their insight and their care to the community is remarkable. And this is not about leadership that we're in this problem. We're in this problem because the world is in this problem. And we see this problem getting worse and worse every year, every day. And at times, it's very difficult to speak, because when I walk the streets and people say, "What's going on?" and then they say, "Ein bias, I share ein bon mace." And it's true, and it's sad, and it brings us to tears. Because these children are not here anymore. I leave my cell phone with the names of our children that passed away in our community as a reminder. When I scroll through the phone to remember that we're doing this, we have a purpose. The Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Sadik Zion, that in the time of Mashiach, against all different types of things that's going to happen. One is, Hagefen yitain pirio, aval hayayin nimkar biyoker. Truth of the matter is if you have a lot of the businessmen know here, that if there's a supply and demand, prices go down. But Rashi says, why is it going to be so expensive? Hayayin nimkar biyoker. Wine is going to be expensive during the time that Mashiach comes. And Rashi explains to us that the entire generation will be busy drinking, and there still won't be enough. So this is an attitude, this is a reality. What we do about it is up to us. This problem of substance abuse hits every part of our community. I haven't seen any particular side, right, left, middle, that has any more than the rest. It doesn't work that way. We find just a few points. I know we'll have a lot of questions afterwards and we could discuss this in a more of a detailed way, but just in a few points. Why is it that now it's so bad and it's worse than ever? Well, first of all, the age of onset is younger than ever. People are coming in, that families are coming to us already in the 8th grade and sometimes in the 7th grade. Our children. And if they're not our children, they're our children's friends and our neighbors and next door neighbors. Also, easier access. Years ago, it was very difficult at times to get a hold of these drugs. You had to go into the slums, you had to find the dealers, and you had to risk yourself, and they would kind of place bets, like they would make deals with each other, who's gonna go out this time because of the dangers. Now, it's delivered to our houses while we're away at work. Our children might come home for a few minutes just to meet the drug dealer, and we don't even realize. At night, when we're not even realizing what's happening, with the communication age today, everything is worse. Everything is more accessible. This idea of vaping, this new way of dispensing the drugs, is different than in the past. It's actually a smoke. It's not a vape. It's a real smoke, and it's dangerous. But you can't smell it. So unless you actually see someone with the smoke coming out, you won't know that they're using. So it's much more available, much more accessible. Everything is just easier and just no effort. And unfortunately, drugs work.
As to which organization deals with which questions, because there should be questions. There's only one yahrzeit the Torah tells us about. There's only one date of death that the Torah ever tells us, and that is the death of Aaron HaKohen. Aaron HaKohen, the Torah tells us in Bamidbar Lamed Gimel Lamed Ches, dies on the Rosh Chodesh Av, which was last Friday. Why, out of all of the dates in the year, out of all the people in history, does the Torah tell us only one yahrzeit? And the answer is very simple. Says the Sfas Emes, the Ger Rebbe, very simple reason, and that is as we are suffering churban, destruction, we should know that the antidote to that destruction is planted at the beginning of it. At the beginning of the 9 days, when we think about our own destruction, about the own epidemics rising in our community, there is a solution. There was a person who lived a life of Ohev Shalom v'Roidev Shalom, and Aaron HaKohen. He was planted at that moment in time as our ability to escape it. The only way we can escape this is not as individual schools, not as individual shuls, not as individual organizations, but as a community. As one community unified, whereas Rabbi Hain said it's not a shame to talk about these things, where it's not a shame to come forward, where it's not a shame to save lives. Together we're going to continue as parents, as grandparents, as neighbors, as friends, as people who are in shul and see what's going on at the kiddushes, as people in shul who see people going through difficult times, to make a difference. Let's move to the next step as a community. Thank you very much. There will be
There'll
Mariv.
be Mariv downstairs in the base medrash.
If a person's in pain, so it gets us out of pain. And kids feel that. And young adults feel that. The problem is that it's addictive itself, it's dangerous, it's deadly, it's a gateway drug because you're never satisfied with what you use in the beginning. You always need more and more. These are problems. So if we see a child in our community, in shul, in school, that looks a little sad, maybe he is sad. Maybe we should go over to him and make an effort as a community together to reach out, to find out what's going on. Much better to get the help first rather than the child looking for the help, and who knows where he's going to go. Education, prevention, this all helps. Nights like tonight that we come together to discuss these issues is a tremendous statement to our children that this is important, and we can start the talk, we can start the dialogue, and let's not end here tonight. Let's bring it home. Let's bring it to our shuls and our places of work, and let's try to make a more healthier lifestyle for our children. May we all have much bracha and simcha and nachas from all our children.
Rabbi Silver, only because you mentioned it, speaking of, going home and discussing it, in a day or two we will publish the video recording, the audio recording, and a write-up of this event. And I think we should ask that, look around the room, see how many people are here. And the same way, myself included, we're all so eager to forward out whatever piece of news is going around or whatever latest thing is going around. We should take a moment to take the recap from tonight's event, take that WhatsApp, take that text, and if each one of us forwards it to one friend, we know how far that can go, and we never know whose life it is that we can end up saving. Before I call the next panelist, I just wanted to acknowledge, speaking of support, tonight's all about making sure that when our community needs it, we can band together and be there for one another. I wanted to personally acknowledge from our office the director of our mental health department, Dr. Bracha Lowinger, who spends her days in a tireless way making sure that everybody in our community has a place to turn to. Thank you, Dr. Lowinger, for being here. Speaking so much about addiction and as well as abuse in other ways, I wanted to also acknowledge Rabbi Tzvi Gluck from Amudim, who's done a tremendous amount in this regard. Thank you, Rabbi Gluck, for being here. Last but not least, as we move towards the panelist section of the program, you will soon see the volunteers from the Goral JCC in the green shirts. When you have a moment, if you will be thinking of writing a question, please fill out that card. Please indicate to whom you would like that question addressed to. It can be everybody or a specific panelist, and make sure that is done so we can organize those questions in a nice fashion. Our next panelist, Karen Bayer, who I've gotten to know throughout this process, and it's been a real honor. Karen Bayer, LCSW, is a psychotherapist in practice for almost 40 years in the 5 towns and Manhattan. She has been trained by the leading clinical addiction specialists of our time. Ms. Bayer guides families through the process of healing their loved ones through recovery from addiction. And just so it should be noted, there was an individual who reached out tonight. He wanted to make sure that no organization had to spend any money, and in honor of Karen, he actually sponsored most of tonight's expenses. So I'd like to call up Karen Bayer.
Okay, thank you. I would like to respectfully acknowledge my esteemed co-panel members. Working with family members affected by the problem of addiction became front and center to me in my work as a psychotherapist, as I saw more and more families affected by it. In Masechet Makot, it is stated, Harbe lamadati me rabotai, yoter me chaverai, umitalmidai yoter me kulan. I have learned much from my teachers, more from my friends, but from my students, I have learned more than from all. It has been my great zechut, privilege, to have spent almost 40 years in the trenches, in an office in the 5 towns and Manhattan, listening to people describe their most intimate life experiences and helping them to navigate them. I will speak to you in the voice of my patients. Quite a few of them who noted that I was addressing you here tonight asked me to pass on these thoughts. From the children, please don't just pin it on the kids, on us. Don't pretend that we kids don't know when you, our parents, are smoking weed, drinking too much, and using edibles. Please, parent us. Don't be our friends. Set limits with us. Give us curfews. We say we don't want them, but we need them. Please, hold us accountable for the money that you give us. Ask us how we spend it. Ask us for proof. Do you know how many of us lose our parents to liquor on weekends, starting at pre-Friday night Kiddush? Simultaneously, there is the reality that spouses, children, and parents are all at risk for substance abuse. One of the most frequently asked questions that I get is, How do I know if my child or spouse is using? Is it fair to intercept a child's computer, cell phone, social media use? This option is considered a viable and legitimate one by many respectable experts in the field. The concept of the integrity of the child's personal space must be severely reconsidered in light of the dangers that exposure to all social media and online use poses. Parents must realize that children need coping skills to deal with anxiety. We have to allow them to be uncomfortable and not micromanage solutions for them. Their lack of capacity to cope with discomfort can lead to a desire to use substances, a quick fix, a simple way to decrease anxiety. Studies increasingly show a connection between social media use and a rise in anxiety. We as parents must be able to tolerate that our children are not always happy and need to struggle to figure things out. We as spouses must realize that to the greatest extent we are powerless over the drug and alcohol use of our partner. Hocking them at a kiddush only results in sneaking. 12-step programs are remarkably effective in helping family members to manage their own reactions and behavior toward the user. Greater harmony can result. Holidays are brutally difficult for addicts. Family dynamics and emotional involvement, both positive and negative, are at a pitch. Overdoses spike. Increased vigilance, prophylactic awareness, empathy, and communication within the family must prevail during these times. We now live in a world where conferences like this one this evening shine light where there was darkness. Just as a reminder, all information has been shielded for confidentiality. There was a time as recently as 5 years ago when a patient, prior to coming to me, had hospitalized a child with a drug problem. The boy was doing badly. The parent got my name, called me, and said, "I am a competent professional, father of several children, successfully married. I don't know where to turn. I need help to navigate this horrible illness. My son is fragile and vulnerable. We don't know what his next step should be. We don't know where to turn. How could this be? This young man is now in his early 30s and Baruch Hashem, doing beautifully, one day at a time. People get better. Recovery exists. Psychotherapy must continue long after the crisis abates for family members, spouses, children, parents, siblings, as well as for the patient. As it states in Pirkei Avot, Lo alecha hamlacha ligmor, v'lo ata ben chorin lihibatel mimena. It is not our responsibility to complete the work that we embark upon, but we are not excused from pursuing it. Thank you.
Our next panelist is somebody I can say, who I love dearly as a brother and a friend, but unfortunately, I see him all too often at the wrong time. Shlomo Katz is a veteran Hatzalah paramedic for 21 years. Shlomo is the face in the community that many know who has been there to help a parent, a sibling, a child at our most difficult times. Through his unique experience as a first responder for Hatzalah, Shlomo has gained an unfortunate but invaluable look into the eyes of this problem that plagues the community in more ways than one. And tonight we ask Shlomo to share some of his experiences that can help us towards a better future of ridding this problem. Shlomo Katz.
Thank you, Rabbi Bender. Thank you all for coming. I want to make it clear, I'm not an expert. There are a lot of experts here tonight. I'm just here to give you a first responder's view of the overwhelming crisis that's facing us and some of the knowledge that I've picked up over the years. Although as I look around the room, I feel like I'm preaching to the proverbial choir, I just don't feel like we have a choice. I want to paint a picture for you of calls and responses that I've been on, and I'll do my best not to be too graphic, but it's hard. It's really, really hard. It's hard when you respond to a home right before Shabbos, and there's a young couple there. It's a beautiful scene, except that something's wrong. It's a young couple that went out and bought some marijuana to relax right before Shabbos. And unfortunately, the marijuana was laced with something. I don't know what it was. They don't know what it was. And their 6-week-old child in the bassinet is having a bad reaction. Rabbi Glad, Dr. Glad, how do we treat that? How do I treat a 6-week-old who's having a bad reaction to PCP? It's hard when Shabbos after Shabbos, you respond to the same neighborhood and find teenagers, 15, 16, drunk. When a family brings in a 16-year-old kid that's laying in the middle of the street, they have no idea who he is, but he's laying in the middle of the street, Shabbos afternoon. He's so drunk he can't protect his airway. And what do? We take him to the hospital. We're mandated reporters. I'm telling you, legally, the rabbi and the president of the shul can go to jail. What do? But I want to tell you a story. It was Shabbos Hanukkah. I got up early and I went to daven, and I came home, and I love that period of time. It's the one time of the week where I don't have 10 things to do. And I can sit with my family. My whole family was home for Shabbos Hanukkah. And I had that great, warm, wholesome feeling. I feel we're not arguing, we're not yelling. We look just like the Brady Bunch. And my radio went off. At first, it was nothing unusual. Could we have a couple units to check out a situation? So I sat back. I'm a big shot senior paramedic. I'm not going just to check out a situation. And then the frantic requests started coming over the radio. Frantic requests for backup. Now, don't get me wrong. The units on scene and all the units in Hatzalah, I'm very proud to tell you, are the first-rate best professionals that you could ever ask for. But when we find one of our children, it's hard. I came running to this beautiful house. I ran up the stairs, and my heart shattered once again. The tears of a parent watching their child die, the pain of a family, the screams, they rip deep down into your soul, and I promise you, it's a sound and a scene that you will never forget. They're an amazing family. I know them my entire life. And the whole family was out that morning at a bar mitzvah. Their teenage daughter didn't want to get out of bed that morning. They're a typical, regular family, just like every one of us. And those of us with teenagers know that sometimes we choose to take the path of least resistance. So she didn't want to get out of bed that morning. So you're going to pick a fight with your 16, 17-year-old daughter? So they all went to the bar mitzvah, and she stayed in bed. It was the last time that they would see their precious child alive. In the room were several Hatzalah members gathered around a beautiful teenager. We did everything we could. We did it with love. We do it every single time with love. And every single time we do it with mounting frustration. We did it all. We intubated. We put a tube down her throat to start to breathe because the opioids repress the need to breathe. We gave Narcan. We did CPR. We gave epinephrine to start the heart. Narcan is a narcotic antagonist. It reverses the effect of narcotics if you give it early enough. We tried everything. I promise you, we tried everything. The end of this call was everyone's worst nightmare. For the last 20 years, one of the best parts of being in Hatzalah are the days that some school is learning hay, and I get to take the ambulance. As a paramedic, I never drive the ambulance. I'm always in the back. They don't let me drive. But I get to drive the ambulance, and I pull up to the preschool, and everybody's gathered outside. And we talk about Hatzalah and what we do. And we teach children, don't play with knives, don't run with scissors, don't play with matches. The bottom line is that we're there for prevention. And before I leave, I tell every child, you are now a junior member of Hatzalah. Because if I can get even one of them to prevent a friend of his from doing something dangerous, if I could get even one of them, that if something happens, they don't go hide, but they call Hatzalah and they get help, then it's all worth it. Tonight, as I look around the room at the beautiful showing of the thousands of people that live in our community, tonight we're about prevention. We need your help. Maybe I can deputize each and every one of you. We all need to solve this problem together. We can't, as a community, pretend that this crisis does not exist. Too many times, these Hatzalah calls that I've been on are kept a secret. I've been on Hatzalah calls for overdoses, where a week later, the parents are trying to convince me that their child had some crazy bubonic plague or some crazy virus. So I need your help. Let me ask you a question. If I walked into your shul Shabbos morning, and I walked into the Kiddush, and it was beautiful, 50 types of herring, 12 types of cholent, everybody's having a good time, and I walked over to the bar or the table where all the liquor is, and I pulled out a loaded gun, I put it on the table, and I walked away. Commissioner, every person in the room would have me arrested, correct? Yet, we all stand around drinking at that same Kiddush. We extol how great the scotch is, how smooth it is, how sweet the bourbon is. I like to make a l'chaim too. But what are we teaching our kids? What are we teaching our kids? Rabbi Glad said it, we all know it. Where do we keep our scotch and our vodka? Is it readily available? Where do you keep your prescription drugs? How many narcotic prescriptions are filled in this neighborhood and left in medicine cabinets? Alcohol and prescription drugs are gateways to hard drugs. Our children know very well that numb, happy feeling after a couple shots of scotch, or after you pop 2 Percocets. And if you think that your children don't know, I assure you their classmates know. Are we offering our children addiction right in our own homes? Tonight is about prevention. Prevention, prevention. We can't do this alone. We need to be educated. Go to the Amudim website. There's a link to prevention tips. Call Madrigos. Find out what you can do. Pay attention to your children. Talk to your children. An ounce of prevention can prevent a lifetime of unimaginable pain and self-blame. I know we're all so busy, but the best thing you can do is talk to your children, pay attention to your children. I spoke to several of my friends in the last 24 hours preparing for tonight, parents that have lived through this, and they told me, tell them to love their children. Tell them to pay attention to their children. When it's bad, love them more. And pay attention. Change in your child can be a huge red flag. Sleeping habits, moods, a greater need for privacy, temperament, mode of dress. These are all normal teenage behaviors, but they can be big red flags. I know people like to come to an event like tonight and leave with concrete steps. So I beg you, here's a concrete step that you can all take as you become my deputies. Narcan. Narcan can reverse the effects of a narcotic overdose. If it's given early enough, it's really simple to save a life. Call Madrigos. Call Amudim. Go on their website. They will arrange a Narcan training. It will cost you nothing, and the life you save could be one of our own. As the Hatzalah member here tonight, I'll close with one more thought. Going back to that call on Shabbos Hanukkah morning, while we were kneeling on the floor over that beautiful child, we feel an unbearable weight on our shoulders. It's literally crushing us. And as we work on someone's child, we're saying to him, we're begging, we're crying, we're pleading, we're negotiating with Hashem, please, not this time, not again. And as our medicine bag and our hopes start to empty, the nausea in our stomach grows. I can't go tell parents again. I can't do it. I'm telling you, it's the worst moments of my life. So folks, we need to wake up. We need a Hail Mary or a doomsday plan. This scenario of a drug overdose is playing out 50 times a month in our communities. That's 600 times a year. That's everybody in this room disappearing this year. 600 members of our next generation. And I'll tell you a Hatzalah secret, and it applies to all of us. When one of our children on one of these Hatzalah calls is buried in that hard, cold ground, a piece of us is buried with that child. I ask you, please, let's do what we can, and let's not let this happen even one more time.
The next bio I got permission to create on the spot. I want to publicly say that on February 25th, 2018 was a special day for this community. And many of you are wondering what took place on that day that was so significant. On that day, Patrick Ryder was sworn in as a Nassau County Police Commissioner. There are people to my left who've been around longer than I, but each of us, unfortunately, as you just heard, have had their moments when the involvement of the police department and law enforcement was necessary. In those few months, unfortunately, there have been some very difficult moments in the community, and unfortunately, some very tragic ones. Tonight, I do have the opportunity to give public gratitude, public hakaras to a man who has been with us shoulder to shoulder at every occasion, and literally, at each one of these tragic and difficult situations, he has treated the community and our children as his own loved ones, and that was our Commissioner, Patrick Ryder. Finally, several days before he was sworn in, we had the honor of hosting the Commissioner. I know he made some other visits as well, I believe to us, Madrigos, whoever else it was. And as we were standing, if you remember, right at the door to our office, and he's walking out, and I turned to the Commissioner, and I said, "What's your plan? What are we going to focus on?" And as the police commissioner, that answer can take hours. And he turned to me, Rabbi, he says to me, "Rabbi, let's make sure that not one more child from our community dies from a drug overdose." Tonight, he was one of the main reasons for creating this event. I'd like to call upon the police commissioner of Nassau County, Patrick Ryder.
You notice every time somebody comes up, they have to lower the mic. He's a little tall for me. And if I can all ask you all one favor, Sunday, 10 o'clock Mass in St. Francis in Wantor, you'd make Father Greg really happy when the basket goes around. I have had the great pleasure of being here and celebrating during Sukkot Torah here in this synagogue with Rabbi Hain. And I saw the outpouring of the community, learning your culture and understanding it. That's what's important to a commissioner. You can't police something unless you understand it. And the better you understand it, the better you police it. I'm going to give you a number, and just bear with me, and let's see where we go on this. There are 50 million kids that attend public schools in this country. 50 million. Since Columbine, up to including Parkland, There have been 200 kids shot and killed in our schools. They attend school 180 days a year, and the odds of your child being shot in a public school system is 1 in 614 million. But we lost 200 kids last year in Nassau County to opiate deaths. We Narcaned 755 kids last year, which could, without that drug Narcan, could have lost them also, putting our number well over 1,000. But I go into these schools and I speak, and everything is school security, and I got it. And we've come up with our plan, and we've been addressing it, and we've been working with the schools. But some of the moms that I speak to will turn around and say to me, well, this is the same mom will say, the kids drank at my house. He's only 18, but it's my house. So it's okay, I watched him. And his friends came over, but it's okay. No longer can you say, not my son, not my daughter. No longer can you say, not my backyard, not my house. I say, yes, your son, your daughter. Yes, your backyard. Yes, in your house. Our kids are vaping at an alarming rate. Over 40% of our kids vape in school today. And that vape, which has that steam or that smoke that comes out of it, causes a thing called popcorn lung. Or it has tobacco in it. That's the small problem I'm dealing with. They're putting a substance called THC. THC is the liquid form of the marijuana plant that comes out, and they put it into an oil, and the kids are smoking it, vaping it. I can't detect it. I can't smell it. It looks like any other kid vaping on a street corner. But the problem with THC, its potency is 3 times stronger than a regular marijuana cigarette. And that becomes your gateway onto your next high. That's where we're starting to see the problems. Our kids going out, playing lacrosse, playing soccer, go home, having their tooth pulled, and the doctor will prescribe 30 oxys for a 15-year-old kid because he had the wisdom tooth pulled. And what happens? We're smart. We're going to give him a half a pill, get through his pain. How about just Tylenol and ice? And then those drugs, get rid of them. Bring them to the local precinct. We'll take those drugs from you anonymously. Take that vaping pipe, which you're not sure. Bring it to the local precinct. We will test it and call you back in 10 days and tell you if there's a drug in that vaping pipe or the Juul that they're using. We realize that we have a huge opiate problem here in Nassau County. Suffolk County is double ours. But this drug, heroin, knows no religion and no color. Everybody is affected across the board. But to go after a problem, just like I can better police this neighborhood, understanding the cultures in the environment, we have to identify the problem and where it is. And in Nassau County, we came out with our 5-pronged process: education and awareness, enforcement and diversion, and treatment. We've added since then what we call the aftercare visit, and I'll walk you through them. The first thing we do is we map where our problem is. Where are the overdoses occurring? And we map it on the flies through a software map called ODMap. And then we learn where the overdoses are. Number 1 location, Massapequa. Number 2 in Nassau County was East Meadow, Hicksville, Levittown, Baldwin, Farmingdale, and we're in Valley Stream starting tomorrow night. Once you take that crime and you overdose it and you understand where they're occurring, we overlay the number 1 crime that are committed by heroin users. And it's larcenies from auto, because 90% of the cars that are broken into because people don't lock them. Heroin is the only commodity that you can buy 20 years ago was the same price today. This is a business to these people. Most of the world's heroin comes from Afghanistan, but the majority of the heroin that comes into here comes from South America. That heroin crosses our border and hits our streets. It's not the heroin of the 70s, where it was 60, on a good day, 60% pure. And the reason they injected it into their vein, because you get a better high. The reason they put a stamp on it, Pat's heroin, Alex's heroin, is because when you are the user, you identify to the product. This is a business to them, supply and demand. And if Pat's heroin is a little bit more pure than Alex's heroin, they're going to come back and buy the stamp that has Pat's name on it. But the problem in today is the heroin's coming into our country 97, 98% pure. Because they want your son and daughter to grab a hold of the drug and not let go of it. Because that's going to make their business better. So now, if we're both at that 97, 98% pure, how does Pat beat Alex? We put fentanyl in it. Fentanyl is a drug used to knock out elephants. Imagine what it does to your 98-pound daughter, mixed in with heroin. These are the children that we're losing with the mixes of the fentanyl. These men are not scientists by any means. They're making a profit off of you. So once we identify that crime of larceny and we overlap it with the overdoses, we go in with enforcement. There's an old saying in law enforcement, you cannot arrest yourself out of a problem. It displaces the crime, you leave, the crime comes back. We know that. But what we do by arresting them, we put the drug sellers in jail, and we take the drug users who are now caught into this disease, and it's a disease. We take the drug users and we put them in front of a diversion judge in the diversion court. And the judge gives them an option. You can go for this program, you can go for that program. Mom and dad can afford it, we'll put you in a better program. But we're getting you into a program today. And if you agree, you come back to my court every 30 days and we're going to test you like on probation. And then if the year goes by and you get through the program and you succeed, we wipe out your criminal record. That's the way you treat somebody that's sick. You don't want to make it worse by giving them a criminal history. We're trying, we understand that. And by bringing them into the diversion court, we're seeing good results. And then finally, we call the town hall meeting. We call the community out. And I got to tell you something. Every one of you should pat yourself on the back. When I went into Massapequa, we had about 150 people. That was the largest. I went into one community, 15 people showed up. And I told them, you had over 60 overdoses in the last year. 15 people showed up. Because we don't want to recognize there's a problem. We don't want to have to talk to our children about the problem. When you come to the town hall meeting, we educate you exactly what I just told you about the process and how we're going to help. And then we have the treatment providers are there and our drug recognition experts, what you need to understand, and we'll come back and do it for this community anytime, that they show you what you need to look for. What's the vape pipe look like? What should the eyes be doing if they're high on cocaine or marijuana or heroin? What should the speech? What's the habits? What's how things change in your child's life? He gets different friends. He quits doing sports. His studies start dropping. That's a good sign that your son's going down the wrong path. Every single drug addict, every kid that picks up a drink doesn't become a drug addict, but every single drug addict will say it started with a drink. So we come back after that town hall meeting, and then we do what's called the aftercare visit. We go back into the community. 1 week later, we knock on the same doors of the families that just had the overdose, and we say, look, did you get enough help? Here's some more numbers for you. If you want a bed, I'll take you right now to New Hope. We got plenty of beds in New Hope. We'll get your child help right now. That's never been done before by the police department. But we realize we have to change the way we police. We have to change the way we take care of our public. And then what we do is we do a 60-day report. And we come back 60 days later and we say, look, during the 60 days, we've monitored your care. We've seen an improvement or we've seen a negative. Every single community, nobody died in the 60-day return. Our overdoses for non-fatal overdoses in Nassau County is down 30% in the first 6 months we're doing the program. Our fatal overdoses in Nassau County for heroin is down 11%. We're making a difference, but we realize that we cannot do it without you. We realize that it takes an army. And look around. I got a great army down here in 5 towns. I'm coming back. And I have a lot of faith in this community that they're not going to see what a lot of the other communities have seen because they're going to engage their children. They're going to have those conversations. We're moving everything in the right direction. Crime is down in Nassau County. We're still the safest county for its size in the country. We're down again in all major crime this year. Our overtime is down. Our overdoses are now coming down. Our school safety programs have increased. We're working with a lot of the yeshivas out here, putting the RAVE app into those schools. But we realize that the number one thing that's going to change, you don't build a house with a bad foundation. You don't put a roof on until you fix the foundation. And that foundation is our children. Number one users of overdoses in Nassau County, 18 to 24 male whites. Look around the room. 18 to 25 male whites. Number one crimes convicted in Nassau County, 18 to 23 male whites. The number one user of social media is 17 to 32, I think it is, that live on that phone, that live in that social media, that deal drugs on that phone, that communicate to their drug dealers on that phone through text messages and private messaging. And yes, pick your son's or daughter's phone up, unlock it right now in front of me. Don't give them warning and scroll through it. They might hate you for a day, but you know what? It's better than losing that child for your life. Spend the time to ask the questions, sit down, look at their friends. Nobody picks my kid up without coming in my house, because I want to see what that kid looks like. I want to know who he is and what kind of condition he is before he leaves with my kid. And he might get a couple extra warnings on the way out the door, too. Again, we need to be involved, and I'm so happy when Rabbi Bender and I spoke, and again, I spent a lot of time with your Senator Kaminsky also, is that we need to get out in front of this opiate issue. We've lost it a little bit, but we're getting out. We're getting out front. We got a long way, a long way. But when I look out in this community, I know this is a place that the children in this community are going to get exactly that safety and security that they deserve. And they will be the future that builds in our society. Thank you.
Before we turn it over to the question and answer, and before we introduce our last panelists, speaking of safety and security, I did want to thank the men and women of the Nassau County Police Department, as well as the entire auxiliary police department led by Inspector Danny Glock for keeping us all safe here tonight. Thank you all so very much. Thank you as well to Gary Wallen and his entire team for sponsoring the audio-visual tonight. For those that are here, those that are watching, thank you for being a part of it. Rivka Dreeben, LMSW, has been an educator for over 30 years, and more importantly, or most importantly for tonight, if I may say, a parent who has experienced addiction in her own family. Without further ado, Mrs. Rivka Dreeben.
Okay, good evening. I first want to start by really publicly thanking Hatzalah, Madrigos, Achiezer, and really the Rabbanim of the community. And I really want to thank my shul, Anshe Chesed, for having a dry shul. No liquor at any Kadeshim. So thank you. Rabbi Lefkowitz, Rabbi Rice, and Rabbi Glott. Good evening. I agreed to give this presentation, Lilu Nishmas, our dear son, Baruch Tzvi Hersh, Shalav HaShalom. When I was asked, I knew that he would want me to try to ease the pain of others who may be facing this disease and educate those who can help in preventing our collective children from having to face this in their future. May HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the right words in my mouth and know that what I'm saying is from my heart, in the hope that it enters the hearts of those who are in need of hearing it. When I use the word children, I speak of all our teens, young adults, as well as adults in our homes, schools, shuls, and communities. From my experience as a mother, an educator with years of working and listening to teenagers who had been asked by yeshivos to leave, I have seen that the majority of those that end up struggling with addiction usually have the biggest and brightest neshamas and potential for greatness. However, this also means that their souls are more susceptible to being hurt. Then when they find no sustenance to fill themselves spiritually or emotionally, they at times seek outside sources. I will not, I cannot give up. I am the very, very proud mother of boys. I respect them and admire them greatly. When young, I imagined my children as going the direct way of their ancestors. Then reality hits, and it hits hard. Drug experimentation led to drug addiction for some of my boys. As a parent, one has to make a decision where the fear of stigma must be removed, hence me sitting here tonight. Do I throw my hands up and say I can't cope? Or do I fight tooth and nail to find ways to help my child? Help in a way that they can become self-sufficient, well-rounded young adults, able to lead a future productive life. As tempting as not confronting sounds, and believe me, at times it's tempting, this option is not an option at all. I felt that giving up on my child felt like giving up on my inner self. My father, alav shalom, raised me with the mantra, the more knowledge one is armed with, the less daunting the task becomes. To this end, I embarked on a quest for knowledge. So, we have to get advice from someone, but from whom, from where? My first step is always tefillah. Turning towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I know that personally I would have not made it through these years without a close connection to Hashem. While at times this was difficult, I knew that my Tati and Shemayim had an open door for me when I was ready. Aside from the Tehillim, there is my Otzer Hanachas, a book for mothers and fathers filled with specific tefillos for many situations we are faced with. This book, while small, is colossal in meaning and usefulness. It has gotten me through many a time. Coupled with tefillah, we seek advice from professionals in therapeutic counseling, the parenting fields, and find other parents who may have gone through similar situations, all in our quest for help. Those who have been there, done that, are great for moral support and advice, while keeping in mind that what works for one situation isn't necessarily what is right in another. We live in a world where instant gratification has become the norm, where there's a surge of physical and emotional pain. One seeks out drugs to relax, unwind, while another turns to chemical use to expand perceptions or give them energy. Others suffer from low self-worth, stress in its many forms, and cave to peer pressure in experimenting with a drug. We are bombarded with the delusion belief that pain can be relieved quickly by taking a drug, legally prescribed, illegal drugs, marijuana, or alcohol. Unfortunately, addiction is a shame-based illness where people fear getting the help that they need. It is up to us collectively to remove this shame, to treat addiction as the illness it is. The disease model of recovery is explained as a person who has developed an illness or disease. Similar to a diabetic treatment plan, the goal is to remove the triggering symptoms, which can then lead to abstinence. Our children need to learn the dangers of drug use as early as possible. They must be made to feel comfortable and safe to talk to their parents or someone at school if they feel different, they're being bullied, or do not feel safe in any given situation. This is a major concern for children. Nurture and care for those in pain, and they will likely respond, while at the same time not enabling them too much. Allowing our children to be themselves without fear of retribution and providing them with the belief that you love them unconditionally. If a child does stray, always, always, always leave the physical door and communication doors open so that they can return. Return to truly feel the love you are providing. Many have told me that if only someone would have truly listened to what they had said in a non-judgmental manner and knowledge that there would be no consequences for the thoughts that they had, that they would have not felt the need to rebel or to turn to substances. I personally give Hakaras Hatov to Madrigos and Rabbi Silver, as well as those in the inpatient rehabilitation programs that some of my children and students attended. Following rehab, Narcotics Anonymous is still the tried and true method that if one is determined to work the program will work for them. Going to NA at least once a week, working the 12 steps, and taking it one day at a time can help anyone with the will for recovery undergo gradual change. And I have seen that change take place exponentially. According to Rabbi Dr. Twersky, true recovery means more than simple abstinence. It means relinquishing the pathological thought system and adopting a healthy one. The 12-step program for parents as well, the Al-Anon and Al-Anon, help parents learn how to be there and not be there for the addict in their family. The addict also has the opportunity to transform shame, which is who they are, into guilt, what they have done. Shame being something that the addict can do little about, since they see it as who they are, whereas guilt can lead to corrective action. When dealing with teens, their views often clash with the adult. What is culturally accepted as norms of older generations are oftentimes one of the issues the youngsters are rebelling against. This is where the work of Diana Sterling is focused, a small little book that has helped many a parent that I have given it to, and my family as well, immensely. Okay. The book opens with a poem that delineates the 7 ways which she created by asking teenagers what it is they need adults to know. And it's titled A Message to Parents. If you respect me, I will hear you. If you listen to me, I will feel understood. If you understand me, I will feel appreciated. If you appreciate me, I will know your support. If you support me, I will become responsible. When I am responsible, I will grow to be independent. In my independence, I will respect you and love you all of my life. Thank you, your teenager. One of the central beliefs of the Parent as Coach approach is that we must commit to making a difference in young lives by committing to changing ourselves so that we can learn to build lasting, respectful relationships with the next generation, internalizing and beginning to live the lessons brought out in this model of dealing with teens, and for that matter, young children as well, and adult peers. It has opened my mind and my heart to a whole new possibility of living life in a more fulfilling way. Learning to use the word respect, whether attached to an action or not, has proven time and again to be an incredibly powerful tool. The power of praising our children can have them realize what they can become, allowing them to feel self-worth and discover their inner strength. Learning, practicing, and using the point of view listening technique has been another major skill I have learned. All humans have the need to be heard and a need to be understood. When one feels that someone is truly listening to them without judgment or interjecting their own ideas, thoughts, or stories, they feel empowered to explore ideas and thoughts that are in their hearts. They feel safe and secure that the person listening to them is totally invested in what they have to say. The power of this depth is truly life-altering. It is said that when a person falls, they can reach heights that others who have not cannot. Once I got over the hiding my child because he's not what we envisioned syndrome, I came to a place, not easily, where I'm the proud parent of a true, strong, spiritual, and very normal young adult realization. These young adults are Baruch Hashem in recovery, living healthy lives, productive, and with growing families. The process is one of going from a syndrome to a realization, shifting from a place of perceived shame, embarrassment, and failure to a feeling of respect for my child. As I say this, I cannot ignore the fact that one of those sons that I have such respect for is unfortunately no longer with us. Due to the drugs and cigarette smoking, his lungs were compromised. Although he had completed inpatient rehabilitation, he passed away from the use of drugs and complications of pneumonia. The message I hope to convey to parents, educators, rabbanim, and members of the community as a whole is the importance of respect, listening, and empathy. Together with a love-tough attitude, where the tough stems from a place of true love, how love is more important and more powerful than brute force, it also requires more from everyone involved. And how when we have learned this and utilized it, it can be what breaks through denial. The advances in neuroscience in this field address the science to practical applications for treatment. It does this while embracing what is known and proven to work. namely that recovery takes place in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, therapy, and all others. It helps in alleviating the stigma by utilizing the advances of neuroscience, medical technology, genomics, social science, statistics, and pharmacology in the study of addiction. It is my greatest hope that support groups for bereaved parents will no longer have the need to take in members, that those of our children suffering from the results of pain who reach out for relief through the use of drugs find the help and support that is available, that parents who have all come out tonight reach out for help, even if they're unsure if their child is in need, and that every individual is respected, listened to, and not judged for the thoughts or questions they may have. In these days leading up to Tisha B'Av, let us try to ease the pains of those suffering in our communities by espousing empathy and strive to use our words to build and not destroy. Thank you.
Thank you again to all of our panelists. In keeping sensitive to the clock, I know there are some questions that everybody would like to hear asked and answered. We're going to ask several of the questions submitted, followed by some brief closing remarks by Rabbi Trump. The first question here is directed to Karen. My child says everybody does it. They won't have anyone to be friends with if they don't do it. What do I tell them?
I think that's... Oh, sorry. I think a lot depends on how old the child is. It's a very general kind of question, and you have to have a context for that kind of question. Essentially, I think that you need to bring other people into your children's lives that are not involved in that way, and we all know that's not true. One of the markers of social success is a child's ability to navigate different social groups beyond the one that he's stuck with. So one of the ways that parents can do that is by the parent themselves reaching out to other groups. But again, I think it's difficult to pinpoint, if a 14-year-old says that, it's different than if an 8-year-old says that or an 18-year-old says that. Again, I think dialogue is important, and I think that the parent becoming more involved themselves socially with other parents would probably be helpful.
Thank you. This next question, I would say, is geared towards Rabbi Glatt and perhaps Rabbi Hain. How should one address the situation of a parent who is a drug abuser, thereby endangering the children? Should the parent be reported to law enforcement agencies?
So I was actually asked this question in a different sort of way today. This is unfortunately not an uncommon question. So first and foremost, Rav Hershel Schachter, Shlita, and many, many other Rabbanim have paskined that when there's any danger to a child, the police, the appropriate authorities need to be called immediately. It's not a time to be concerned about what will the world think, what will my neighbors say. If there's a child in danger, the appropriate authorities need to be called. This is a very, very difficult situation and sometimes a very, very complex one. But the safety of the child has to take precedence. If, Baruch Hashem, that is addressed and taken care of or is not a problem in the immediate sense, so then there's a tremendous amount of, hopefully, wisdom that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will give the local Rav to help address the problem. There are many, many different ways to address the problem. It's not a one answer for all. There are many resources in the community, and hopefully one of the very, very positive outcomes from tonight is that there are resources in the community and that people should be familiar with how to access those resources. And certainly the Rav, the community member who's involved, needs to make sure that if they don't have the expertise to address it, that they seek out the appropriate professionals that can address it. But I can't stress enough that the safety of the child has to be the #1 priority.
The next card is a two-part question geared to the police commissioner. The first is, are there programs within the police department so that if my child does get involved with drugs, perhaps having him be arrested and learning his lesson and getting the follow-up care will be possible? And number two, and two separate people asked this question, what are we doing about the drug dealers in our community?
So I love that first part of the question, because whenever a kid gets in trouble, the first thing out of mom and dad's mouth is, I'm calling the cops on you. And you know, we're not the bad police, we're the good police. So yeah, there are programs and there are ways that we get you the resources. We don't have the program that says we're gonna sit down and bring you into a recovery, but we get you to a recovery location. We'll get you the numbers for help. Nassau County has some great programs and they're free. Free because your tax dollars already paid for them, but they're free. We do have the method and the gateway to get you there. The second part of that question was?
Second part of the question was, how are we dealing with the drug dealers?
So, my good friend Jeremy, you still there? Jeremy Glicksman? So Jeremy was a DA in Nassau County, and now he's went to the dark side, he's in Suffolk County. But when Jeremy and I did cases together, we did it in what we call asset forfeiture. So not only did we go after the drug dealers and put them in jail, but you gotta hurt them. And you gotta hurt them by taking away their profit. And we went after their homes, their bank accounts, their cars, everything that put them, and the reason why they sold those drugs is how we went after it. So Nassau County goes after the drug dealers. Your district attorney is a phenomenal prosecutor that puts them away and makes them serve that time. And on the asset forfeiture side, we make sure that we take every dime they ever made from that profit of your children that suffered through it. We make sure that we make them pay through the financial side also. That's how we go after them in Nassau County.